This looks like a relaxing game mode. Oh shit. Looking at global account instead of beta, it looks like this weird glitch is still here, but Babel Tower has been named correctly. We can see the second part of Babel is still not open, but that's not really that fun anyway, and usually the rewards are not as good. This is the part of Babel we care about, and it's the same as before, 120 points for all the rewards. If your account is maybe a month old or so, you can probably scrape somewhere between 85 and 65 rewards. If you do that, then you're pretty much getting all of the rewards at that point. You're not missing out on too much. If your account age is 2 months or longer and you've been playing actively and doing your dailies and whatnot, you should be able to get 120 points. Even if it's a little bit of a struggle, you should be able to figure it out. For anyone else over that, pick a goal and aim for it. You can see the points needed for each badge are the same as the last few Babels, so this should be pretty straightforward. If you want to break it down, you can check one of my prior videos or do the math yourself, but basically you only need a certain number of points for every stage and you're guaranteed to get the 600 badge. I ended up with 1,210, but I might go back in and play around a bit more, we'll see. Now, when I checked this out on beta, I was really worried that this was going to be the easiest Babel ever, but like too easy. As you can see here, beta account, so triple S plus team and max score, no problem. Like, I fell asleep during this run and it was the first run. This is definitely the easiest Babel so far. However, it's not too easy. It's still a challenge if you want the challenge, assuming you're not whale, of course. Anything that's triple S plus, of course the game's going to be easy at that point. If this is your first Babel and you're starting new, you will actually have to clear a stage on each level before you can start doing it on the max difficulty. So you'll come into your stage select, and I think it was Overload is the highest unlocked. Everything above that will be locked, and you need overclock difficulty to do max difficulty. So you'll have to come in and select what you need. It'll either be 14 or 19 from memory, and as long as you have that, you can see we've got over 19 and 14. That's all you need. Clear the stage, and then the highest difficulty will unlock. So essentially it forces you to play it on easy mode first. So it is kind of a waste if you've already played, but if you already have the 600 badge from prior Babels, it should automatically unlock for you as it did on my account. Another new thing that's been implemented this Babel is when you get a game over, you actually have the option to reboot. Now, the first time you do this, you can see it tells you here the total degrade. What this is it will degrade your score by 10. So if you had 150 points selected and you reboot, now you're going to get 140. So you cannot get max Babel score if you have rebooted. I actually like this because it makes the game a lot more accessible to people. At first I was a bit iffy about it, but then I saw how they'd implemented it and I was fine with it. So if you do click this reboot, and say you just get scuffed one shot or the game glitches, as happened many times during my playthrough. What? What is this glitch? Bruh. Now you guys know why I don't mouth max Babel. It's so scuffed. It can be quite frustrating. So at least you get that score and you can salvage the run and you can still come back later and retry it without getting killed. It seems to be graded pretty fairly in the way that if you need a second reboot, now you've already got 10 degrade and it will add another 30. So that's 40 points off your score already. At that point, just lower the difficulty or figure something else out, restart the stage. Losing 40 points is kind of pointless. You should probably just play on a lower difficulty and you'll probably still get more points. Even if it's 20 less points than you would have played otherwise, that's still more than losing 40. So this was a really nice feature to see implemented, and it just makes the game more accessible for anyone new. Now the max score for both of these two levels is 150, and for this stage here, it's 142. The Transcendent stage was certainly the easiest one. You can see we've got teams of 2s and 3s now. Even though Selena doesn't have an execute encounter, everyone else does. You should be able to pass these stages pretty easy. This is all max difficulty, as you can see. You can see the buffs for this Uniframe stage make it very easy to solo, and subscribing to my YouTube will make it even easier. So hopefully you've been listening to my videos and you have at least 3 Transcendents. And if you have 6, great, this is going to be a breeze to do on max. If you have 3, then you'll get through it alright. And you'll certainly get enough points for the 600 badge. Now the gimmick on this stage is essentially you get to fight the Ginyu Force. However, you can fight them one at a time, or you can fight the leader first, and then when he loses, he'll come back with the rest of his Ginyu Force buddies, and they'll all try and beat you up, making terribly lame excuses as they all get beaten and run away. So the main buff to be aware of here is this one here, Rematch. If you have this selected, this is the one that makes it so that you get to fight all of them at once, rather than fighting them single. I personally felt like playing them all at once was a much more fun and engaging fight, rather than fighting them all at one at a time, and during the first part of the fight where you actually have to fight the boss alone, it's quite boring, and you have two choices. You can either just continuously attack him and nothing really happens because it takes forever for the orange bar to go down, or you can just wait and be bored and let him attack you until he does the counter attack, in which case you can counter and it ends up a lot quicker. So that's the first stage covered. That brings us to the second level. You can see that each of these stages was done with max score. However, I did reboot once on both of these stages, losing me 10 points on each. So if I want, I can easily go back and do that without having a reboot, but at least the score is there and saved for now. Now, this stage, you're actually supposed to use an elemental team. However, you can see I've used Near Team here. The reason for this is because Near Team absolutely sucks on this third final level. The boss moves around way too much, and especially if you're just using A2, which is what I'm using, you'll have a lot of trouble actually hitting the boss with your damage, and it just gets really boring and the fight just goes downhill from there. So, we swapped that over with Dark Team. You can see Dark Team is here, and Dark Team actually got a comparable score to Physical Team, which we'll go over later. So the gimmick for this fight is essentially you want to lower his yellow bar under his HP, and as soon as that is lowered, you'll need to attack him in the back. And then once you've attacked him from behind, he will then do an attack, and if you dodge that attack successfully and end up in the matrix, you'll see his leg will glow like this. At that point, you can shatter that limb, and then make sure you don't go anywhere near the blood that stays on the ground because that will deal a lot of damage to you. But once that's done, you can see that this buff here, it will remove his continuous healing. Now you can really start the fight and start dealing out the damage. Keep in mind that this boss has 2 phases, so once you deplete his HP once, you'll get a cutscene, and then it will move on to phase 2 where you'll have to do it all over again. This can take quite a lot of time with the Gen 1 characters, especially if you don't have a lot of damage. So configure your buffs correctly so that you're not falling asleep in a 15-minute fight. The only other real thing to keep note of here is, of course, you want to shatter his arms after his leg is done. You're just going to keep shattering his arms when you get the chance. But it's something that will just happen. You don't really need to look out for it that much. And if you come down here and we check the buffs, Harden is the one that you really want to look out for. If this is on, you can see that you will need to rotate what you attack the limbs with for them to actually get shattered. So you don't have to do this in any particular order, but let's just say you used the basic attack last time, that won't work the next time, so you'll need to use either orbs or an ult. Ult can be kind of tricky to do because a lot of characters have delayed ults, but if you get a character that has an ult that does damage quickly, then it's not that bad. But either way, you can ignore that if you want and just swap between basic attack and orbs for the most part. The only other thing you may want to pay attention to, which I didn't really bother with, is Assimilate, and if this is turned on, basically you'll want to rotate elements every time you shatter his arm or leg. Whatever element was used to shatter it will now have an increased resistance to until the next time a limb is shattered. So we already went over Near Team. Team 2, I used Fire Team, and yes, I don't like Nanami that much that I used Lotus. I was actually not expecting it to work well. I was expecting Liv to do all the heavy lifting with Lee helping out a bit. However, Lotus actually did a huge amount of help. The yellow bar was shredded very significantly by Lotus, so it was actually a pleasant surprise that she was playable and usable. So there you go. My favorite way to play. No tanks, all attackers, and it worked out fine. And on to the third and final team, we used Vera, Bianca, and Liv. Just standard lightning team. It was a bit of a long drawn out fight, but we got there in the end. And you'll find if one of the characters gets one shot, the run slows down a lot, which happened to me right near the end of the run, and that's what caused me to have to use a reset. So if I had the patience to sit there for another 10 minutes, then this would be an easy max, but we'll see what happens. To start with, we had new physical team, which obviously performed fine. And we also have Dark Team, which shouldn't really be here, because if you come into the buffs of this stage, you'll notice that they're all physical. If you check the buffs for level 2, you'll notice that they are encouraging you to use elemental characters. However, sometimes that makes things harder. As we see, Near Team here is a very OP team and was easily able to score 150. However, they weren't working very well at all on level 3, so sometimes you just need to change it up and use what works. For the third and final level, the boss and the boss's gimmicks kind of just happen. It's not really something you need to worry about, it just makes the stage harder. So basically he will go through a phase where he'll sit there and you can just attack on him while he is absorbing shield, and then once that's done, you can go back to fighting. The only real part that you'd want to pay attention to is that you're punished for using elemental characters. You can see after absorbing the first shield, he gets fire and lightning resistance up 30%, and after the second shield, which is a bit later in the fight, he'll get dark and ice resistance, which, as you can see, I used Dark Team, so it wasn't a big deal. However, if it's lightning or fire team, then I would be reluctant to use them here because it happens at a much earlier stage in the fight. The two buffs that will actually make a bit of a difference here are Luminous Evolution. So if you have this ticked on, you'll notice that when the enemy drops below 30% HP, he enters phase 2. While it was certainly a bit more annoying with all the flying around, I wouldn't say it was really harder than phase 1. So up to you if you want that ticked, but that's worth quite a lot of points on its own. And the other one to be aware of was this one here. Now, if you're looking for something to leave off and you're trying to find the thing that will make the fight the easiest with the least amount of things off, this is probably the one, because it will summon a clone of the boss while he's absorbing shield, and if there's already a clone in existence and it has more than 10% of the HP of the original, then you'll get an upgraded clone, which is not really fun either. So the main thing that makes this a nightmare is having to fight two of them at the same time and having to dodge double the sets of attacks, especially when they unsync, or one of them is using parry moves while the other one is using dodge moves, and it just makes it very messy to fight. The easiest way to clean this up is if you can get rid of the clone first. He will lose a lot of HP very quickly instead of the original boss, who is a lot more tanky. That's the easiest way to get out of the situation, clean up the clone as quick as possible, and then move on to hitting the boss. And that's pretty much it. At this point, you should have most of your characters used up, if not all of them, depending on your account and how long you've had it. And you should be finished Babel. All that's left is to tweak teams and see if you can get a higher score. Good luck with Babel. Let me know what scores you end up getting in the comments. By the way, these outfits are getting a rerun soon, so instead of melding terrible hours for Selena's outfit, now you can just swipe. That's it for this guide. Don't forget to like if this helped you, and you can check out my other guides here.